Hey everyone, and welcome to an episode of Chai Talk with Wajatli for the Left Hook Substack, where, of course, it's just perfect timing. The electricity is all gone in my home. There's no such thing as cloud. There's about 800 kids around screaming. This is the only place where I could get sunlight, and we're talking about this right now as the GOP has voted to advance the billionaire bill from hell, Dave, which will, in addition to, adding about $3 to $4 trillion to the debt, will gut Medicaid, shut down rural hospitals, shut down about 25% of nursing homes, also add billions of dollars to create a police state. And as this is happening, you would think over the weekend, David, that Democratic leadership would, I don't know, talk about this bill, but instead they spent their time smearing Mamdani, who, as of today, has won by double digits in New York to be the mayor. And oh, yesterday we got another gem. In order for Democrats to win back the people because they have a lower favorability rating than Donald Trump, who's underwater, they have unleashed Project 2029, which has all the people who helped consult the Democrats who lost in 2024. Now, some might say, how is this all connected, Waj? What are you blabbing about? And David Sirota, who's the editor and founder of The Lever, for many, many years has said, folks, you got Democrats looking. David, you. Did you hear me? Go for it, David. I'll yield the floor to you.
I mean, look, I can. The issue is that money connects all of this, right? The story that you just told is a story of money, right? I mean, yes, it does feel like that the Democratic Party is more scandalized by Zohran Mamdani's victory in New York than it is by the Republican bill that is being rammed through Congress, right? I mean, and I think that tells the story of money, that the establishment of the Democratic Party is more afraid of and more opposed to, in a lot of ways, what they perceive to be the left than they are necessarily opposed to and outraged about what the Republicans are trying to do on a daily basis. Now, I want to be clear. I don't think that's all Democrats. I'm just saying this. We're talking about kind of the leadership of the Democratic Party is more afraid of, scandalized by the left than they are afraid of and scandalized by sort of run-of-the-mill Republican extremism. And I think that explains this sort of dichotomy in the responses. And my view is, look, if you're talking, if you're spending your political capital and your time in the public eye scandalizing the successful Democratic primary election of Zohran Mamdani at the same time Republicans are throwing millions of people off Medicaid, like maybe you should go be a Republican. Like maybe you are a Republican, right? Like why don't you just have sort of a be honest with yourself about what your actual priorities are, but I think it's on display for us all to see, and I think it's important for this to be a learning experience. All of these are learning experiences. Now, I don't think this is all doom and gloom. I mean, look, the bill moving through Congress right now is a wrecking ball. As I put it, it is the class war in legislative form. Right. I mean, I worked on Capitol Hill 25 years ago when they were passing post 9/11 bills, when they were passing George Bush's tax cut. All of that was bad. This is like a lot of the worst parts of all of that into one bill, because this puts Medicaid cuts, food stamp cuts to finance giant tax cuts for the wealthy and a build out of ICE, right? I mean, it's all in one bill. This is the class war inside of one piece of legislation. So it is absolutely terrible. But I also think that the political dynamic inside of the Democratic Party is, I think, improving in this way. That if you look at the polls showing people are dissatisfied with the Democratic leadership in a way that liberals and progressives, frankly, haven't been as dissatisfied with the Democratic leadership in the past. If you look at the election results in New York, where a progressive candidate was outspent with $30 million of oligarch money and still won in the capital of global finance, it seems to me there is a sort of rank and file grassroots awakening happening potentially inside of the Democratic Party. Now, I say that having written a book back in 2007 called The Uprising, where I thought it was a moment where that was going to happen. I'm actually, what the thesis of that book called The Uprising was this anger in the public is going to go one or the other way. It's going to go left or it's going to go right. The Democrats are going to channel it or the Republicans are going to channel it. Well, guess what? What ended up happening, in my view, is that Obama channeled it for the establishment of the Democratic Party, it channeled the center left part of it, and the Tea Party exploited it and turned it into MAGA. And so essentially the uprising inside the Democratic Party was crushed about, 17 years ago. So I think we're at another moment like that where an uprising is potentially happening, the conditions for it, a sort of center-left uprising inside the Democratic Party. But make no mistake about it, they're going to try to crush that down, right? I have said this before, I will say it again. The establishment of the Democratic Party
Yep.
is terrible at literally everything. Everything. It can't pass legislation. It refuses to really seriously fight Trumpism. It doesn't really get much done other than for the donor class. But the one thing that it is the GOAT at, the GOAT, greatest of all time in the history of this country, it is crushing down dissent inside of the Democratic Party. You have to, I mean, I'm not, you got to hand it to them kind of thing, but it's like, you got to acknowledge that's the one, they are the Michael Jordan of shutting down dissent inside the Democratic Party, which I will just conclude by saying that's why they're so freaked out about Mamdani's victory. They tried to crush him down.
Well, I mean, they're not. I mean, you don't have to conclude. We saw examples of it in 2016 with Bernie, right? They would rather crush Bernie and rather than see why. Why did Bernie, as an independent, as a democratic socialist, get so close? What was it about Bernie that attracted even Joe Rogan and Donald Trump supporters? Then in 2024, okay, let's see here. Why did Donald Trump voters in 2024 also vote for AOC? Also, according to the YouGov poll that come out, the main reason, not the only reason, but the main reason why many millions of Democrats stayed at home was because of Gaza. And like you said, they, instead of just having the bare minimum of literally, I was talking to a Palestinian American commentator and activist yesterday, Omar Badar. He said the bar was so low, David, that it was in hell, that they said, can you just have a Palestinian who said, F you, shut the F up, and you better vote for us or else. And what happened? People stayed at home. I still said vote for Harris. I'm sure you said still vote for Harris, right? But you have to, inspire people. And now, David, and the reason why it's all connected to the billionaires is over the weekend, before it came out that Zohran won by 56%, he still won. He won by 43%. It was clear that he was going to win. Instead of who's an assemblyman, let's see why a man who had the entire establishment behind him, Bill Clinton, Clyburn, right? Let's go. A Palantir, New York Times, Lawrence Summers, millions of dollars, AIPAC. How did this guy do it? Democratic socialist, consistent on his values to help people, the most marginalized workers, transgender community, immigrants, Palestinians, affordable housing, affordable healthcare, free buses. You know what we'll do, David, during this horrific bill, which, like you said, is like the worst bill that we've seen in our lifetimes, which is going to, folks, in addition to everything that they said about Medicaid, SNAP, which is bad enough, billions of dollars to create a police state. And if you don't believe me, listen to Donald Trump today, where literally he's at the Alligator Alcatraz, the concentration camp in Florida, and he's mentioning about deporting U.S. citizens, right? Private prisons. What was the stock that went up right after Donald Trump won? The stock of private prison companies. So in addition to you literally dying and billionaires getting richer, we're going to have, quite literally a military state, a surveillance state, a police state. You would think that Hakeem Jeffries and Gillibrand and all these people who were given prime real estate on the Sunday shows would talk about this. And instead, David, they use bad faith smearing against Mamdani and said he should denounce a slogan that he has never, ever even said. So people who think, David, oh, poo-poo on you, David, shut up and just get behind the Democratic establishment. I've lost some subscribers over the past couple of days. I thought about you because I'm like, David's been going through this for 10 years. Like, David, you Bernie bro. I'm not even a Bernie bro. David, you progressive hack. David, why can't you get with the program? David, why can't you just get in line? And then I'm like, folks, I give you the last week. I give you the last 3 days. Your response to those Dems who are listening to us right now. And I'm so sorry, folks. The electricity has gone out. It's like literally a microcosm of America. The electricity has gone out. I have 800 kids here because my friends' kids are here. My Wi-Fi is not working. It's hot as hell. And my Substack is not working right now. So I can't even see how many people have joined live. David, can you see how many people have joined us?
Yeah, it looks about 470 plus.
And it's growing. Great. Thank you, folks. Or else I acknowledge you. All the bugs are happening right now. And hopefully you could see David and hear David. David, talk to us about the people who have criticized me over the past days, have criticized you for the entire career for the past 10 years, who are saying, shut up and get in line.
Well, what I would say is that the project of making the Democratic Party a stronger opposition party is integral to stopping Trumpism and stopping basically fascism. And I use the metaphor. I always use the metaphor: the Harlem Globetrotters and the Washington Generals. Uh, if you want to defeat the Harlem Globetrotters of evil, aka fascism, okay, continuing to cheer for the Washington Generals without demanding that the Washington Generals put better players on the floor is it's a great way for the Globetrotters and the Washington Generals to sell a lot of tickets. It's a great way, it's a great spectacle, but you're not necessarily helping solve the actual problem, which is that the Harlem Globetrotters of evil are constantly dunking on you and dunking on the country. So I use that metaphor to say that you have to see the um, effort to change the Democratic Party into a real opposition party as not at odds with stopping fascism, Trumpism, and conservative extremism. You have to see it as integral to that cause. And I think that logic bears out that you're not going to, without a real opposition party, you're going to get what you're getting right now in Washington, right? You're going to get what you got in the 2024 election. If you wanted to prevent Trump from being reelected, there should have been very serious concerns early on, as I think a few of us had, that Joe Biden wasn't going to be a strong nominee, and that he should have gotten out way before he got out, that there should have been some sort of open primary contest to try to kick the tires on who would be a strong nominee. And people who raised those concerns at the time were told that they were being disloyal and helping the right instead of being seen as them participating in a project to make sure that the opposition was serious and strong. And so I don't think you're doing any favors to the Democratic Party if you are constantly trying to be an apologist for the weakness, for the for the part of the party that has been unable, unwilling to really take on what we're talking about. That again, and look, the Democratic leadership is insidious in how it promotes this idea that any questioning of the leadership itself and its decisions is somehow not only disloyal, but makes you a Trump ally, that you're undermining the cause. I would say, looking at what's gone on, even in just the last few weeks, few months, that if you are not angry at the Democratic leadership, wanting a change of leadership, helping try to bring about that change, or at least giving voice to the notion that that change needs to happen, you are helping Donald Trump, because Donald Trump benefits and his movement benefits by preserving the current leadership of this party, a leadership that is at best a speed bump to his steamroller, or to use the metaphor, is at best the Washington Generals to his Harlem Globetrotters.
And I don't know if you saw it was about 2 weeks ago where AOC did a rally with and for Mamdani, and she came out, and for the first time I've heard in a couple of months, I've said this before. I think I might have mentioned this with you. I believe there's a cold civil war happening in the Democratic Party for leadership. No one's come out and really said it, but it's clear. Their favorability is at 29%. There's no clear messaging. Schumer is like what, 11%, right? People don't respect Jeffries anymore. I have said repeatedly, folks, he's not built for this fight or made for this moment. I believe he's too attached to old school politics and specifically corporate money. And AOC said no matter how much we try to help them,
Yeah.
they tell us to get back in line. Now, I'm paraphrasing what AOC said, but she said it publicly for the first time. And then Mamdani won. As of today, folks, Mamdani won by double digits. I think it was 56%. And thanks to this beautiful New York multicultural cross section of Brad Lander and Black candidates all cross endorsing grassroots campaign, authentic messaging, going against capitalism, going against corporate greed, going against the billionaires. He came out against the billionaires. As they were attacking him, Mamdani over the weekend said, yeah, I don't think we should have billionaires. And instead, now you see this bill being passed that will only help billionaires, right? Literally steal from America to help the billionaires. And I think, what we have to do is step back for a second. And you've done a lot of great investigative reporting on this, but you did this article, I think that came out 2 days ago about how the sausage is made. And can you talk about the process here? Because you can sit there and look at personalities, look at Democrat, Republican, but the truth of the matter is, and Francesca and I were talking about this, it's the corporate money that has contaminated politics. This has been the plan all along. At the end of the day, the reason why all the power went behind Cuomo, a predator who they threw out of the party 4 years ago, is that he will not disrupt the status quo. The reason why Slotkin and others have not joined on fighting oligarchy and instead have attacked the woke is because the oligarchy pays their bills. Can you talk to us about the money? And by the way, folks, I think it's clear David and I do not think both sides are the same. Trump is a fascist, okay? He is a fascist. He must be defeated. But we're talking about the corrupting influence of the 1% that explains why, again, instead of rallying behind this guy who got 56% of the vote and rallying against the bill, they have now gone all in to attack him, and they have no coherent messaging against this bill from hell.
Yeah, look, if you're an oligarch right now, if you're a billionaire, if you're a corporate CEO, you are looking across the political landscape at everything other than the New York race, and you are like, this is beyond our wildest dreams. This is amazing. You have the Republican Party fully on board with everything we do. You have a faction of the Democratic Party and the Democratic leadership insisting that the problem is either people are too woke or the problem is the left is allegedly getting in the way of oligarchs wanting to cut red tape. Right, that's the abundance movement. Every essentially every major political faction in the United States, the Republican Party, the Democratic leadership, is aligned in defense of the economic status quo and the oligarchs. Everything is attempting to distract from the oligarchs being at the center of the problem, distract from letting people know that oligarchs are at the center of the problem. I mean, that's the through line, which is almost it's so obvious that it's almost hilarious, right? Every single problem somehow we live in the most unequal society in the industrialized world, and somehow
Huh,
that's
huh.
not the fault. That has nothing to do with the people at the very, very tippy top who have all of the money. That has nothing to do with them. It's
No, it's
everything
the
else.
fault of pro-Palestinian activists and an immigrant worker, David.
Right. It's so obvious, look, it's maddening, right? I mean, it's the old idea that they use the culture war to distract from the class war while they wage the class war, right? That is basically that paradigm holds true. That is what is going on here. But again, the reason I made an exception for the New York mayor's race, and I think we have to dig down a little bit. Why are so many Democratic leaders and Republicans, by the way, and donors having such a special meltdown about one mayor's race? Look, it's a big race, right? I mean, but it's one city in one
A
state.
nervous breakdown, David. A nervous breakdown.
Yes, like something way beyond that we I really haven't seen it, right? I mean, CNBC, you guys now like a televised forum for rich people to have nervous breakdowns over one mayor's race. You got, donors. I'm pulling my business out of New York. Like, what is this really all about? Well, to my mind, what this is really all about, this is the first time, probably in 50 years, certainly in my lifetime, where the collective force of power and money was ready for a battle. It was not surprised. The AOC race was a surprise. So this is the first time where the collective force of power and money were completely ready for this race. The race was happening on their home turf, the capital of global finance. They weren't surprised. It was on their home turf. They went all in for a guy. Yes, Andrew Cuomo. I've done a lot of reporting on him. Super scandal plagued. But here's a two-term plus governor with a very famous last name with all the money. So it's almost like an experiment built in a lab, right? You've got this guy with very little money, not a lot of name ID. You got this very famous, with a famous last name candidate with all of the money. And it's the first time that the collective power of money and power cannot buy an election. That's the freak out. It's not a freak out over Mamdani's policies. It's not, because his policies, they may be radical, I guess, if you're an oligarch, right? It's like the idea that if you're so used to getting your way all the time, then anything slightly different than getting your way feels like oppression. So I think there is
Yeah.
obviously policy dispute, but the freak out is not the intensity of the freak out suggests it's more than just about Mamdani proposing some free buses. It is about a fear that they have
Yep.
lost control, that if they couldn't buy that race, how many other races might they not be able to buy? Their whole playbook, we're going to throw everything out. He's an anti-Semite. We're going to try to smear him all over the place with all sorts of scurrilous attacks. It was the classic playbook that they have used backed with all the money that they've typically used that has always worked for the last 50 years. And for the first time, it didn't work. That's why they're freaking out. And you know what? I can sort of see it that if I was in their position, getting used to having everything I want happen, totally comfortable, not worried about the affordability crisis, the economy, it's all working for me if I'm a billionaire, right? If
Yep.
suddenly I see that, I'm like, wait a minute. Maybe people are starting to figure it out. Maybe enough people are starting to figure it out that we can't control every single political outcome.
And I completely agree with you. I think why they're so freaked out is what Zohran represents. And what he represents is an extension of AOC. And they couldn't extinguish AOC. So they said, okay, we'll just call her the squad and an outlier and, we'll contain her. But oh my God, the plague. The virus has escaped the lab. It has
Exactly.
contaminated the young generation. And now the mayor of New York City will be a brown-skinned man with a Muslim name who's a democratic socialist who's openly against billionaires. And, oh, we'll crush him. We'll crush him good. Oh, shit. 56% of the people like him, which is why I was just talking to Michelangelo Signorelli on his Serium XM show. And I said, that's what he represents is the threat that this cannot be contained. And the people who are actually acknowledging that this is a major threat and a threat specifically in politics and something they should confront and not necessarily destroy it, but to see what they can learn from. It's not the Democrats. You know who's talking about it? Republicans. I hate saying this, folks, but Steve Bannon and others are like, hey, Mamdani's onto something. Hey, he ain't an outlier. Hey, it's the Bannons and the grassroots MAGA folks who are paying a lot of attention to AOC and Mamdani, and they don't see them as these outliers, folks. They're like, they have overlap in that they're against the establishment. They're against the 1%. They have overlap with our base. And if we keep effing up, they can peel off our base. And what Democrats are doing right now are saying, let's crush them. I just use this
Right. I mean,
analogy
look,
with Michelangelo.
it's the question of, and I wrote this piece for The Lever, which folks can find at levernews.com, and it co-published with
I'll
Rolling
link to it.
Stone. Yeah, and it was basically, who's afraid of Zohran Mamdani? Like, ask yourself, like, who is really afraid? And I would put it this way: it's billionaires, people in media paid by billionaires, people who work at think tanks paid by billionaires, politicians who are bankrolled by billionaires, and the people who work for politicians paid by billionaires. Those are the real people with money and power who are really afraid because they have gotten used to calling the shots. Now, I want to be let's be honest about this. There is
Be
going
blunt.
to be a counter attack, right? I mean, we've seen this when AOC won her surprise primary. They there was a fear. There was a similar fear. Oh my God! Like they were surprised, so it's different. They were like, "Oh my God, we got to stop this," and they worked very hard and diligently to stop any kinds of AOC style candidates in congressional primaries. So I fully expect there will be a sort of counter push, whether it's in the New York mayor's race or elsewhere, that they are now, there's going to be a sort of a doubling down. There's not going to be really a negotiation, in my view. I mean, you've seen some parts of the Democratic media elite starting to say some nice things about Mamdani. But I think what's interesting about that, Waj, is that they're trying to aestheticize him. Have you noticed that? They're trying to be like, oh, well,
Yeah.
he won because he had good viral videos and he's very charismatic and he's telegenic. Now, it happens to be true that all those things are correct.
Oh,
He
and
did it.
also it's because he went against a predator. That's the only reason.
Right, right. It's just that Cuomo was just bad, right? And you have to ask yourself, well, what kind of Jedi mind trick is that? What's going on here, right? And my view is, and I use the Pod Save guys as an example, right? They came out, they are the avatars of Obama politics. And looking back, I think we can understand Obama politics as Obama, extremely telegenic, super media savvy, was like one of the first really internet driven candidate. Did have a very populist message, got into office, in my view, did not uh, fulfill his populist message, turned hope and change into more of the same, bailing out bankers who were foreclosing on people, essentially went to bat for the donor class. But I think the Pod Save guys, the center of the Democratic Party, the sort of Obama era Democratic Party leadership and media machine, took away from that the only thing that matters is brand, aesthetic, sort of media savvy, media image. And the message doesn't matter. That if you don't fulfill your message, if you don't even have a populist message, all of that is fine if you have a good brand. And I think you see that they're trying to sort of foist that onto Mamdani. Oh, he won because he had good videos and he's good looking and he smiles a lot. And right, and look, it is certainly true. Having worked on lots of political campaigns, it's certainly true. The better a candidate you have, the better the better your message can be carried. But that idea that it's all image and not message is an insult to voters. It suggests that voters are too stupid to be voting on the actual policies being offered to them and promised. And I think in this case, what you see is that, yes, Mamdani was a great messenger, but it was the message. And give him credit for honing that message and
Yeah.
delivering that message, right?
And for being consistent.
Right.
And for being consistent.
A city we can afford. Brilliant. It's super smart. Everyone understands that. The policies. So I guess my point is that the attempt to aestheticize Mamdani is an attempt to depoliticize him and pretend the message wasn't important. So to my mind, that's part of the effort to defang his policy agenda. That's the effort to try to say, okay, we didn't defeat him in the election. So the thing we're really afraid of is we have to stop what he represents. So the part of the way to stop what he represents is to pretend he only represents the rise of internet savvy politics, not that he represents lots and lots of people wanting fundamentally different policies than the center of the Democratic Party is offering.
And, the other thing that he did, and what AOC also did that they don't like, is he's authentic, he's passionate, and he's consistent on the message. When he's grilled on Palestine, he goes, you might disagree with me, but I'm for all human rights, including
Yes.
Palestinian rights. I'm against billionaires. Do you have a critique of capitalism? He goes, yes, I do have a critique of capitalism. I actually quote MLK. Whether you call it democracy or democratic socialist, there should be fairness and affordability, right? And equity. He stayed consistent on his message. He was authentic. He came off as sincere. He was passionate, just like AOC and Bernie and others. And that's also what attracted a lot of people that said, I might disagree with him on this, I might disagree with him on that, but he seems he actually has convictions and the courage of convictions, and he's fighting on those convictions. And damn it, even if he loses, yeah, he's for a better, affordable city that all of us can live in, and not just the one person. I might disagree with him on Palestine, or BDS, or this or that, or whatever whatever topic you want to bring up. But like overall, you know what? I respect that spirit, and I respect the fact that he stands up for the little guy. It's exactly why people like AOC. I might not agree with everything, as she says, but I agree on that, and that's enough. And you're seeing that mobilize people, and yet we now have abundance. Can you break down the counter to this message of fighting the oligarchy? Because fighting the oligarchy, folks, we're trying to connect the dots for you. You might look at us as a bunch of cranks and everything is broken in my home. So I don't even see how many people I have tuned in, David.
718.
Wonderful. Thank you all. I honestly oftentimes read your comments, but everything's glitching for me right now, which is why I'm like this. I hope you're enjoying this. But the counter to fighting oligarchy, instead of saying oligarchy, the majority versus the 1%, the majority versus the billionaires, the 99% versus the 1%, the message that I've said for several months is the winning message. Simple, easy. They're like, no, we will have abundance. Can you break down the abundance counter movement that has started in the last 2 months?
Sure. So a couple writers wrote a book called Abundance, Ezra Klein, Derek Thompson, and the book argues that its fundamental argument is that regulations and laws put in place essentially by liberals with good intentions are the primary obstacle to widespread prosperity, to more housing supply, a better healthcare system, more scientific innovation, et cetera, et cetera. It is if that argument sounds familiar, it is because you're old enough to remember Ronald Reagan. That is essentially Ronald Reagan's argument, that the government is the problem, that, I'm from the government, I'm here to help, are the nine most terrifying words in the English language. I want to start on this by saying, look, it is absolutely 100% true that there are things that are put in place by the government that make life too complicated, that are inhibitors to a better lived experience and shared prosperity in this country. I think it's certainly true. One of the things they harp on are restrictive zoning laws. Clearly, NIMBY zoning laws that prevent a higher density housing wrongly limit the supply of housing, and that certainly contributes to higher housing costs. But taken together, the question is, are those things, all that red tape, is that the primary driver of the economic dystopia that the American economy has become? I would say clearly it is not. And so then I start asking the question, well, clearly if it's not, if the housing crisis, for instance, really reflects a real estate industry that in many cases artificially limits supply in order to drive up the price of housing, a real estate industry that doesn't want to build affordable housing. There's plenty of housing. There's not a lot of affordable housing, right? We've got, what was it? I think it's 10, 12 million vacant units in the United States right now. The point being that there's a difference between housing and affordable housing, and I'm focusing in on that because that's what the abundance movement talks a lot about. I would say that you have to ask the question, if they're trying to blame, zoning laws, which again we can all agree, restrictive zoning laws are bad. Great, we agree on that. But if they're trying to blame the housing crisis on the left, by the way, one last thing, in the wake of the financial crisis that was created by the oligarchy, in which we saw after the financial crisis the largest loss of home construction, I think, in modern history. If you're trying to nonetheless blame the housing crisis on the left, not on Wall Street, real estate moguls, et cetera, you should be asking, wait, what's really behind this movement? What is this really about? And I would argue that what the abundance movement is about is less about creating actual abundance and more about deflecting attention from the people who are hoarding the abundance.
Yep.
Let me give you a stat. The Rand Corporation, for those who know it, not exactly a left-wing socialist organization, right?
No.
The Rand Corporation recently reported that over the last 50 years, the bottom 90% lost $79 trillion of income that it should have gotten had the economy grown in the way it was growing 50 years ago. $79 trillion of income. My point would be, in an economy where $79 trillion was stolen by the bottom 90%, we do not have a problem with a lack of abundance. We have a problem in which the abundance is being hoarded by the very rich who use a deregulated campaign finance system, who use the legalized system of corruption that we have to keep control and to keep that happening. We have plenty of abundance. The question is, how do we more equitably, how does that become more widespread? How does the prosperity not end up being hoarded? That's the big question. And frankly, that's the big question that the abundance movement doesn't want to ask. And the reason they don't want to ask or pay attention to that issue, not surprisingly, a lot of the abundance movement is funded by the oligarchs who don't want those questions asked.
And what I've said in Cliff Notes terms is they want restoration. They don't want reformation, because they want restoration to the way things were in the 90s, the good old days, neoliberalism, right? This type of capitalism where we all just got along and there was a little bit more wealth, but the rich stayed rich and the poor just got along, right? They don't want radical reformation. And what we've seen is that a young generation, if you looked at all the polls, young Americans, folks, it is just shocking. They don't have faith in the American dream. They don't have faith in the American future. They don't have faith that they can marry. They don't have faith that they can afford a house. It's down, down, down on everything. And so if you sell them on capitalism, they'll say, what has capitalism done for me? If you sell them on democracy, what has democracy done for me? If you sell them on that neoliberalism, what has that done for me? If you sell them on the establishment, well, the establishment has made money while I'm still on my parents' healthcare. And now I don't even know if my parents are going to have healthcare because of this stupid Republican billionaire bill where friggin' 20% of Americans are dependent on Medicaid and get $1 trillion worth of cuts. So what have you done for me lately? Restoration to what? More of poverty? No, I want reformation. And I always take the opportunity to shit on Reagan, as we all should, because it was Reagan and Reaganomics in the past 45 years that gutted unions, that gutted workers, that gutted regulation, right? And what happened as a result, folks? You've seen the income inequality widen, coinciding with Reaganomics. Everything went to the top. Nothing went to the bottom.
And Waj, let me add to that, because that's a really important point when we talk about the abundance movement. The greatest tool of abundance in the modern history of the United States has been the labor movement, period, full stop, in terms of distributing prosperity widely. That at the time, in the era that we had the widest kind of prosperity, distributed prosperity, was a time in the mid 20th century where the labor movement was most vibrant. Keep that in mind, because the point is, the abundance movement, which purports to be about abundance, has specifically said that its big obstacle and problem, that its big opponent is the labor movement. That to me is a tell. It raises the question, abundance for whom? Abundance for the oligarchs funding the abundance movement, or abundance for the rest of us, right? And that is really what this always comes down to. Because if you're really serious about abundance, what I would say is shared abundance, distributed abundance, widespread prosperity. Then it seems to me the obvious things you could be for, okay? Medicare for all, expanding social security benefits. You would want to repeal the Republican law that limits the amount of housing that public the public sector, governments can build. It's called the Faircloth Amendment. You would not be only focused on how do we give private real estate moguls more ways to build unaffordable housing. You would focus on more investments in public educational institutions, right? You would focus on wanting to build out the labor movement so that there's more shared prosperity. That's a real abundance movement. That I have just laid out for you in many ways the opposite of what the so-called abundance movement advocates for.
You flaming communist. And then also what I want to say, he's not a communist. This is, I was talking to, like I said, I was on Michelangelo's show, and I said, new rule, and if I was a Democrat, I would do this, but they don't do this because they don't fight. I'm talking about the leadership. Each time Republicans, especially Donald Trump, I don't know if you heard him today, he called Mamdani a communist. New rule, have them define communism, have them define socialism, have them define Sharia. It will make for fantastic entertainment. I double dare any reporter, anytime they want to smear the rest of us as communists and socialists, just have them define it. And another point that you said, it was the 50s, right? In addition to a strong labor, strong unions, right? Which allowed one, traditional family where the father used to go work, the mom could stay at home, raise the 2.3 kids, and, you could live a pretty good life and go get an education and get a job. What also happened, that flaming leftist queer socialist, Ike Eisenhower, right? Dwight Eisenhower. Remember that guy, that pinko commie lefty guys? Implemented the highest taxes on the 1%, right? On the rich. And all that money then flowed down and was able to be distributed abundantly to America. What a thought. And when they poll people, even on Fox News, should the rich pay more taxes? David, you've seen those poll year after year after year. The MAGA folks are like, yeah, why am I as a nurse or a teacher paying more than Jeff Bezos, who just threw a $50 million freaking wedding in Venice? It's like, you can't make this shit up, David. I've kept you longer than I have, and I want to give you the final word on this, leaving people on an optimistic note, because this Republican bill is horrific, folks. And all you need is 4 Republicans in the House to have some morality and steel of spine. That's it. Just 4. Just 4 to vote against it, and it'll die. But each and every single time, you expect Republicans to do the right thing, like the Democratic leadership has always expected them to do, they do the wrong thing. So I fear that this is going to pass. It will be the largest theft/wealth transfer from the rest of us to the rich. It will create a police state. It will take away Medicaid, nursing homes. People will die. And you have an opportunity. You have an opportunity for a narrative and fighters to emerge. I do believe Mamdani's win is you need wins in life, David, or else we'll just be friggin' depressed and apathetic. I think 56% of people coming out from Mamdani, the fighting oligarchy tour, winning, the millions of Americans that came out with no kings, the pressure being put on by community leaders, immigrant groups in LA to force the LA Dodgers to say F you to ICE, and LA Dodgers then had to give $1 million. I believe there's momentum building, David. But you've been in this game a long time. Leave us with some hope. Am I being delusional? Because I think there's something there. I think it's a long walk, but I think we've taken some strides.
So, look, on this Republican bill, let me give you one stat, not to depress everybody, but this is the Congressional Budget Office, which is the Congress's, essentially their economic agency that is now run by a Republican. That office issued a report that found that the bottom tenth of income earners in the United States would lose $1,600 per year from the House version of this bill, and the top 10 of income earners in the United States would receive $12,000 per year of new benefits on average. Okay, that is the class war. As I said, the bill is the class war in legislative form. That's the bad thing. The good news is that I think people are, if not well aware of the specific granular details of this legislation or what's going on generally, they understand that they are living inside of a class war. More and more people understand that. And the reason I'm optimistic, granted, having been optimistic in 2007, remember, I wrote that book, The Uprising. I was younger. I was probably less cynical. I had this hope that would be a sort of moment for the Democratic Party to become a real populist force. I was wrong. It went in the other direction, or it was harnessed by Obama for cynical ends. I guess that's a really more precise way to put it. And the Republicans, the Tea Party, harnessed their version of working class populism. And Obama's, I think, in my view, his failures, his not just failures, his refusal to be serious about delivering on a mandate created the conditions for. The reason I am more optimistic now is because when you look at those polls that show people upset, Democrats, self-identified Democrats and liberals, saying that they are upset with the Democratic leadership, that's something different. That is something I cannot remember in my lifetime. That
Nope.
for as long as I have been an adult and paying attention to all this, no matter how bad the Democratic Party has been, if you look at the polls, you would typically see people still believe, liberals, the party rank and file and their voters still believe in their party leadership. Uh, that is not the case right now. Now, I don't know how long that's going to not be the case, but I think the fact that you see polls now where it's not just the country, but Democrats and liberals in specific are saying they are deeply unhappy with this Democratic leadership, that is the opportunity for real change. That reflects how, I guess, uh, motivated and upset people are, rightly so. And those are the conditions for something really positive to come to happen all across the country, whether it's Mamdani's victory, whether it's other primary challenges, whether all of that dynamic scares more establishment Democrats into being a real opposition. Let's not forget about that, right? There's these follow-on effects where Mamdani's victory, all of a sudden, every Democrat in Congress, every Democratic mayor is like, "Oh shit! If I don't want a challenger like that, I better get right on that." I worked on Ned Lamont's primary campaign against Joe Lieberman. Ned Lamont ran against Senator Joe Lieberman. Ultimately, Lieberman got into the general and won the general. A big tragedy, frankly, a historical turning point that Lieberman won. But the point is that the moment Ned Lamont was a serious candidate against the Iraq War in that race, every Democrat in Congress got super freaked out and started speaking out much more powerfully against the Iraq War. I shouldn't say every Democrat, but most, or at least many
Many.
Democrats suddenly changed. And the point is that I agree with Mamdani, there are no moral victories in politics, right? There's not like a we lost, but we still won. But the point is that if the dynamic itself can create follow-on changes. If every Democrat in Congress is afraid of this dynamic, afraid of having a primary challenge shoved up their ass, then guess what? They are going to end up, at least temporarily, if not longer term, they are going to uh, try to mitigate that by being a stronger opposition. So to me, that's why I am optimistic. I'm not optimistic. I'm not naive in thinking, Chuck Schumer is going to become a better leader. I'm saying the public's anger, knowing that the Democratic leadership is so bad, it creates the dynamic for better things to start happening.
I'm going to paraphrase George Carlin. It's a big billionaires club and you ain't in it. And the Democratic leaders who realize that the people are fed up are the ones who are going to rise. I don't do the both sides, folks, because you've seen the GOP bill. David doesn't do the both sides. We're dealing with a fascist. But the opposition needs to meet the moment. And the opposition needs leaders who can rally and galvanize the public that says, I don't want restoration, I want reform, and I want it now. And will the leadership step up? I don't know. But I know that some of these people ain't built for the fight and made for the moment. And so it's up to us to pressure them, primary them, and get those leaders and fighters in these institutions who are willing to represent us and take on Thanos or Unicron, which is the 1%. That is what we're all facing against: the oligarchy, the broligarchy, the billionaires. David, thank you so much for taking the time. Can you be my eyes and ears? How many people are watching us? If there are any nice comments, can you give them a shout out?
Yeah, there's 854 comments. Barbara Olson just had a nice comment. I'm looking here. Mary has a nice comment.
Thank you.
Thank you to everybody for listening. I really appreciate it. And Waj, thank you for your work and thank you for having me.
David is fantastic. He's the editor and founder of The Lever. Go and subscribe. Fantastic investigative reporting. And for those who joined us late in this conversation, first of all, I apologize. I'm like this because the all the electricity has gone out. Just a perfect metaphor for America right now. And my Wi-Fi signal, of course, today has gone out. And then, of course, my popular kids decided to invite 800 kids from the neighborhood, all while conducting this interview. So I've been standing holding this, and I have a cramp. But I couldn't miss out on David breaking it down and connecting the dots. For those who have joined us late, nearly 900 people, this will be up in about an hour or two. I strongly recommend going back and listening. There'll be a transcript. David always connects the dots, and like David, I don't bend the knee to either Democrats or Republicans, to the establishment. We're independent. We give credit where credit's due. We don't do both sides because we know we're dealing with a fascist regime, Donald Trump. But we need the better fighters in the Democratic Party. The left hook is free. I am a fool, but I'm not stupid. There are no paywalls. You pay what you can. I have 3 kids, so if you can give some money, please do. If you can't, I understand, but I believe people should be informed during a crisis of democracy as we're fighting the oligarchy and fascism. So at the very least, please share this. Please be a free subscriber to this and The Lever. That, again, is David's site that he has created, award-winning investigative journalism. And until next time, be kind to yourselves, be empathetic, and please, oh, please, don't be a fascist. And finally, some basketball news. David's team, the Nuggets, freaking man, making moves left and right. Congratulations, David, getting Cam Johnson. And who'd you get? You get Bruce. Now you got Jamal and Aaron Gordon and the Joker. It's disgusting. I'm very unhappy.
You missed the news. You missed the news, dude. We just traded Saric for Valanciunas, and apparently we got Hardaway Jr. We're gonna
You got
be a
Hardaway
real
Jr.
legit
What?
team, dude.
No, what'd you get Hardaway Jr.?
A friend of mine just texted me. I think on the free agent market. I can't. As soon as I log off, I'm gonna go check. I don't want to start
How do you guys
false
have
rumor.
this much? How do you guys have this much money? What the F's
Because
happening in Denver?
Because the Cam Johnson trade freed up salary cap room from MPJ's giant
Reporter.
contract.
This makes me very unhappy and displeased. But
Makes me
because I want to
very
be and didn't you also get Valanciunas?
Yes, that's what I said. Yeah, today we traded for him.
This is disgusting. I'm actually very upset as a Warriors fan, but in the spirit of generosity, I'm happy for you, David, because your team is Denver. And now I'm just going to troll you. If Denver or the Rockets don't win next year, I'm going to mock you mercilessly on Blue Sky.
We would deserve it. We would deserve it if we don't pull it off.
Thanks all for watching. Thanks, David.
Take care, man.